Yeah, so let's dig into the tackle now, the rugby tackle specifically. When you look at somebody executing a tackle, what shapes are you looking for? What positions are you looking for? Where do you want the feet? Where you want the arms? Can you just go through the full breakdown of how you see the skill in and of itself and how you break it down?
Yeah. So again, I'm just like the luckiest guy in the world. I think I've had some great experiences, as I mentioned. So in 2015, over here in the States, the Seattle Seahawks started talking about rugby tackling, released a couple videos, and made it very popular. Well, because I had experience in both sports, I suddenly became like a guy who might know some stuff. And so people wanted to chat. Then in 2016, a gentleman named Richie Gray, a Scottish guy who was the contact coach for the South African Springboks during the World Cup, came over to the States and spent 2016 with the Miami Dolphins. The funny story, it won't be too long, but an email came to our CEO. He comes and stops me in the hallway one day and says, "Hey, there's a guy at the Dolphins who wants to talk to you about some tackle stuff." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And we get quite a few, solicitations at USA Football around this kind of stuff. Well, the email came across my desk. I think it was 2 or 3 days later, before the CEO forwards it over. He's a busy guy. And all of a sudden I look at the name and my eyes get huge and I like run down the hallway and I'm like, "We have to take this meeting. I'm pretty sure I'm the only person who knows who Richie Gray is. Like, he's just coming out of the World Cup with the box. You know what I mean? Like, we got to go." So I've spent the last 4 years really under the mentorship of Richie Gray, who is an absolute genius, by the way, when it comes to this stuff, kind of sharpening my skills. And his system, which we at USA Football have adopted, breaks down the tackle into 5 key areas. And no matter what tackle type, no matter what tackle finish, no matter the situation, I think we could probably agree that these aspects happen in every tackle. The first one's going to be tracking. So I have to effectively get to the ball carrier or to the spot of contact. The second one is prepare. So that's where we talk about that ability to dynamically find shapes. And a lot of athletes may be really good at, maybe they're super athletic and they can get to the spot, but they take contact in poor positions when we start looking at spinal alignment, that kind of that good postures or the setup of their feet. Third one is going to be the connection phase, where we're actually meeting force with force. We're going to connect our shoulder, connect with the opponent. Fourth phase is going to be acceleration. We have to continue to create force so that, that initial impulse force, if you're playing against a good player, is not always going to win. Our method of continuing to create force is being able to continue to push through the ground. And then we're going to have to finish the tackle. So at some point, we're going to have to take it to the ground. If things go well in the connection and acceleration, maybe we're driving them back and going on the ground, but we're also going to have finishes for other situations. No matter how much you train, you're not going to win every collision. And if you play long enough, you're going to come up against someone who's better than you. So when you look at track, prepare, connect, accelerate, and finish, that's kind of how we think you can look at every tackle. And from a high level overview, say like, okay, where was the breakdown? Hey, we never got to the spot. Like all we could do was dive and lunge and grab and, try to get them on the ground. Well, that probably was a tracking error that led us to have those other things kind of be a little bit wacky. We could get to the spot. We could have unbelievable posture. Our shapes could be great, but we could have no explosion and no connection. And we just absorb all the force. And even though our posture was great, at some point, Newton wins and whoever has more force, I get knocked back. All right. Well, so we had a connection issue, but we were in good position. We often see athletes who have great connection, but then they leave their feet very early. So they lose their ability to accelerate almost instantaneously. I use the analogy that we're playing poker and we push all our chips on the table. We have this great explosion, but if we don't win that initial connection, we have no get out of jail free card because we put everything into the connection. There's no way to continue to create force because we don't have cleats in the ground. We can't utilize any leg drive. And sometimes players do everything right and they can't finish the tackle, and maybe that results in an offload, or maybe that just results in them, the opponents getting on the front foot because they're able to continue to drive, gain positive meters, make our defensive line reset just because we couldn't finish it. We couldn't get them on the ground appropriately. Yes, are there times when we're going to suck up that tackle a little bit, maybe isolate a player and go for a steal? From a tactical standpoint, absolutely, but that's part of the decision making process. So we teach multiple heights of tackles as well. So I think athletes, and this is why I'm so big on posture, athletes need to be able to master kind of a multitude of postures. I may be going for a choke tackle or a chop tackle. And so that's going to drastically change my spinal alignment because my strike zone might be, in at the ball or kind of through that pec area, or I might be trying to come straight through your thigh boards. Well, that target is going to dictate my posture quite a bit. And so we think the multifunctional tackler, to steal a line from Richie, has to possess both dynamic accuracy. Can I put my shoulder where I want to in space, and the ability to achieve different postures as the opponent presents us with different targets, right? So I may want to have a choke tackle, but if I have a second row crashing through the midfield and he's just decides he's going to get low, he's got two hands on the ball, he's going to give me the old, forearm elbow shot, and he's not caring about being evasive. He's just going to let you know that, like, hey, couple times this game I'm coming through the midfield and I'm gonna test your physicality. Like, the choke tackle may not be the best situation. Maybe you catch somebody off the back of a ruck and they're in a poor posture, they're standing upright, and it's a great time for me to choke tackle and tie up the ball and slow it down. So there's the decision making and the ability to do that. But generally speaking, I need iron rod through the spine. I need to be able to transfer the force from my lower body through my core into my shoulder, regardless of the tackle height. I want to have those hips loaded. I need to keep my cleats in the ground at all times. So I got to have a base that allows me to have cleats in the ground so that I can generate leg drive. I want my feet as close as possible for the tackle type. This is something that I've actually spent quite a bit of time with talking with U.S. tackle coaches, that by nature, if our spine is a fixed distance, my upper body tackle, that level 3, as we call it, choke tackle, my spine's going to be much more horizontal, which means I'm going to cover less distance. As I go lower, I start to cover more distance horizontally. So my foot placement for an upper body tackle is going to be slightly closer than my foot placement for a lower body tackle, keeping it generically, just because my spine is going to take up more of that space. So understanding spacing, understanding timing becomes a really key point of training. But the old analogy was, foot in the hoop. We want to get our foot in the hoop. I think it came from an old drill where they put like hula hoops around tackle bags, and you want to get your foot inside the hoop to ensure you're close enough. I'll be honest, I tell most of the American football guys, you want your foot in the Madden circle. So anyone in Madden video games, the player you're controlling has a little highlight around him. If your feet aren't in the Madden circle, you need to keep tracking. Once you get in the circle, then you can start preparing and syncing for the contact. Connection is going to be a lot about initial shoulder accuracy, obviously. So can I hit my spots? And for young coaches out there, this is a really interesting point. There's a lot of spatial awareness that's involved in this, right? So it doesn't matter what your coaching cue is. You could tell them where you want them to target. If they don't possess the spatial awareness and coordination to actually put their shoulder where they want to in space, does it matter what you're saying? And so sometimes we got to take a step back and reverse engineer and build some postural awareness and some spatial awareness, so that when you say, hey, we want to tackle, at the belly button, through the short rib, down at the thigh, they can actually put their body where they want to and achieve that accuracy. Obviously, there has to be some physicality to it, so we need to address the power aspects. There's some mentality stuff that, you know, we want to address in the connection as far as the willingness to do the job. Not everyone has to love contact and you know, be that blood and guts player, but there has to be a willingness. I think that often comes from confidence and having the correct skills. Then our ability, and this is where I like some of the crawling as well, that if we want to have effective leg drive on a level 2 tackle, which is going to be our lower body tackles, you start to think about the postures and you start to say, are our athletes comfortable generating force and taking multiple steps in these elongated horizontal postures? And for a lot of players, they're very used to accelerating in our traditional sprint mechanics positions. But when we change those postures radically to mimic a thigh level tackle, it's much more difficult for them to control their posture, control their core, and continue to take positive steps without kind of stepping over themselves and just bailing. And then, you know, they're dragging their laces on the ground and they're not running their feet or accelerating. And then our finish is, in a lot of ways, can come back to some of our grappling. But once I'm locked in on an athlete or the ball carrier and I have made contact and I've obviously done the work to secure the tackle with my arms, I have good clamp, good grip, how am I breaking down their posture to be able to actually put them on the ground? Because again, remember, they're getting coached too. They're starting for the other team for a reason as well. So they're probably not just going to fall down because you got to the right spot. We're going to have to break down their posture to a point that we can upset their center of gravity and ultimately take them to the ground. And that's where some of the grappling tools come in to allow me to not just generate leg drive, but to manipulate spinal angles in spinal positions so that I can really dominate that situation and put them on the deck.
Yeah, man, that was a great breakdown of the tackle. You talked about the lack of, let's say, acceleration in that fourth phase as one of the common mistakes that you see. What are the other biggest mistakes that you see athletes usually doing with tackling in rugby?
Yeah, I would say leaving their feet first and foremost, just kind of not keeping their cleats in the ground is huge. And it's probably like the number one issue I see everywhere. The other thing is I believe there's a psychology, this is my personal belief, on throwing the arms really big and wide. So I'm coming into the tackle. We've seen high level players, and if you see drills, you know, they're keeping their hands in tight. We call it boxer's hands, but their hands are in tight, and we're trying to punch those arms as tight around the opponent as possible. But if a player is afraid to miss, they often throw their arms big and wide, like, I'm casting this net, I'm going to get them. There's a couple things that I don't like about that. One, when I cast that big net and I get my arm kind of way out here, I'm really kind of opening up that shoulder joint. I want to stay as tight as I can so I'm strong and I have this great, strong strike surface that's going to transmit power. Out here, I'm a little loose, I'm a little wobbly. You know, you don't want a 120 kg athlete running full speed into your AC joint when you're just kind of wobbling your arm outside here. It's not going to be a whole lot of fun. The other thing that I don't know if people think about is the wider my arms get when I come into the tackle, actually the slower it is to complete the clamp and grip. The tighter I can throw my arms into the tackle, and we use the term punch, trying to stick with that boxer's theme, but keeping them short, sharp, and crisp, the tighter I can keep my arms going into the tackle, the quicker it's going to be for me to find some grip on the backside. And grip for us is going to be hand usage. And then clamp is going to be from shoulder to wrist. So when I'm kind of tightening that down, I'm trying to take away all the air. So the tighter my arms, the quicker I am to clamp and grip, which hopefully means the quicker I am to get in control of the situation. I'm sure everyone has seen a great initial connection. And if the arms are slow to get clamp and grip, the ball carrier can find space, whether that's finding space to reaccelerate away from us or finding enough space for the offload it's often because of big, wide arms and then kind of a slow clamp, slow grip. So the tighter we can keep that, obviously, the better we're going to be. It's going to allow us to get in control of the situation incredibly fast. But I think if we could fix wide arms, clamp and grip, and then feet, we correct a lot. The other little trick that I like, which is stolen 100% from Richie Gray again, is we want to institute the mentality of finish on top. And something as simple as that is we want to finish on top of every tackle. What I like about that is it ensures our athletes are continuing to work. So it's not just connection. It's not just, every coach in the world screams, bring your feet, chase your feet, run your feet on the tackle. But when we're looking for that finish, we're going to continue some upper body grapple, some battle. We're going to try to better our position. We're not going to be satisfied with just getting the ball carrier to the ground if we have this mentality of finish on top. I really think that helps athletes just plant a seed in their brain that I'm going to work to better positions and work to dominant finishes. And then those dominant finishes allow us to reset our defense, do all of the right things. Obviously, we're going to roll away the right direction. We're going to do all the things within the rules. But if I can finish on top, as opposed to, being dragged backwards and finishing on, side by side or finishing on my back, hopefully not, we're in position to reset an aggressive defensive line. And I'm probably making a dominant tackle on the stats if I can finish on top. So I think those three things are huge. And then tracking, and this is more for the coaches, I think, but often I don't know if our tracking drills are high enough quality. We love to kind of do these little tag off drills where we're showing we're keeping the right inside out or outside in leverage. We're showing we're taking the right angle. But normally we limit the ball carrier for the sake of perfect practice, that the players are demonstrating they know what leverage the coach wants, not showing if they can do it in context of a game when, Bowden Barrett has the ball and he's giving you all this, the go step and the juke and the change of speed. So I think everyone understands what tracking is, but the ability to do it demands some pretty open and high intensity speed standpoint activities to make sure players can actually get to the spot on game day. It's normally really easy when we do kind of our non-competitive, tackle drills where we're quote working on technique to slow things down so much that the tracking in the ball carrier's evasive or lack of evasive maneuvers gives the tackler a false sense of security in their ability to get to the right spot. And then on game day, they get a stutter step and a reacceleration. All of a sudden the guy turned the corner on them and they're thinking, what happened? That never happens in practice. Well, that's because we were going 75% and just making sure that our technique looked right. We weren't addressing the openness of the evasion tracking dichotomy that happens every time a ball carrier and a tackler are engaged in that one-on-one battle.
How do you deal with players who struggle, who have that blockage with the contact, the tackling, the impact side of things? Is it something where you talk to them on the side? Is it something where you kind of start them back down at the bottom of the let's say the progression in terms of tackling? What's your way of dealing with those players?
Yes. So something that we taking from our football development model and our youth development model that I think carries all the way up is confidence. And so Dr. Eric Corum, who is a friend and who's really active on social media, has a great talk on stress inoculation. Right. And that, just like psychology, there's a stress inoculation cycle that happens with contact. And some players, fear the worst, or they fear it's going to be uncomfortable. So I'll steal his analogy because I really like it. But if our only training was the competition exercise, you're going to be scared out of your wits and you're not going to enjoy it. So imagine if without any training, we went up in an airplane to 10,000 feet and we're like, all right, to learn to parachute, you got to parachute because parachuting is hard and scary. So let's just get over it. And everyone's going to be like, whoa, what the heck is going on? But if, we do the ground training, we do the education, maybe we take you to some of those jump towers, where you jump from 100 feet, then you jump from 200 feet and you're on one of those, rope slide kind of swings. And maybe I take you to one of those air tunnel kind of parachute things and you get to do some of the free flow in this air tunnel. And I teach you all the skills and I slowly build up the height and the speed and I inoculate you to those stresses. Now, when we come into your first jump, you're still going to be nervous, but the inoculation and the skill building makes you feel a lot more confident. And I think the same could be said for any contact skill in any contact sport, is that are we doing a good job with stress inoculation? Meaning, are the speeds, the intensities, and the distances manageable for the athlete so that they start to build up some kind of inoculation and feel comfortable there? And then the technical teaching has to be good enough. And this is where coaches often want to blame the players. And maybe sometimes it's a hard look in the mirror. Is the technical teaching good enough that the athlete feels they have the skills to actually do it well? And if an athlete feels like they have the ability to do the job, they're often going to have an enthusiasm that coaches mistake for toughness or being a hard man or versus being soft. And it's just because they know they can do the job, so they're gonna engage in that situation. Where those who have fears and panics about the ability to do the work, are often the ones who flinch, who shy away, who aren't really comfortable there. So we say athletes need to be calm and comfortable in contact before we move them to collision. So that goes back to kind of our grappling progression, that our athletes are comfortable in the friction, the force, the battle of being engaged with another person. And then we're going to stress inoculate to distance and speed the whole time, making sure we're doing a great job with the technical teaching so that the athlete feels I have the tools to get this done. So if a huge athlete is coming at me, I have the tools that I'm probably not going to choke tackle this guy, but I have the tools in my arsenal that I may be able to strike low, and maybe I think he's too big and his quads are too big. I'm not going to try to drive finish it, but I'm going to use one of our roll finishes to challenge the forces in a different way that's comfortable for me. And I'm just going to remove his base and he's going to go down. So I'm going to level 2 roll tackle this guy. We try to give them the tools in their toolbox to approach the situations appropriately. And I think that's key, is that, we have to do that right. Now it's a balance, because no matter how detailed we become in our technical model, you can never come away from the physicality of tackling is going to be a physical act, but you can definitely address the confidence, and you can give players tools that allow them to feel confident.